Welcome to Proudly Out of Line. I'm Mardi Moore, an old school dyke and the CEO of Boulder-based Rocky Mountain Equality. With everything going on around us in this world right now, it's the perfect time for all of us to be engaged, informed, and hopefully have a little fun along the way. On with the show. On with the show is right. So glad to be joined in our creative studio by our very own Colorado State Attorney General. Welcome, AG Weiser, to our space and to the show.
Marty, it's great to be with you. I'm glad to finally make it to this echelon of accomplishment to be on your podcast.
Well, pretty excited. You know, you're in some pretty great company, along with Joe Nagoose, along with Kate Kendall, who's now running the Gill Foundation. And right before yours goes live will have been Alok, who is a big deal. And you're a big deal. So it's all working out very well for me. Very well. So I had contact with your office in the last year since the new federal administration, and know that your team is really, really busy. And we'll talk some about the law, but I kind of want to know why anyone would ever want to be the Attorney General. And so I'm wondering, like, I read the paper, I have a sense of your family history, as tough and dark as pieces of it were for your family. And I'm wondering if that's the piece that leads you to your advocacy work, or like, what are you all about?
Someone shared with me recently a piece by Bill Kristol that reflected on the letter George Washington sent to a Rhode Island synagogue in 1790. That letter is an amazing piece of what America promises everyone: freedom and opportunity for all. It says, America's the land where everyone shall be able to sit safely under their own vine and fig tree, and none shall be afraid. And William Kristol actually says, if you take that seriously right now, you need to be thinking about the trans community. There's a lot of people trying to make trans people feel afraid. You got to be thinking about the LGBTQ plus community, particularly young people who are facing threats based on who they are. And my family history is one of Holocaust survivors. And you know what the Holocaust teaches us? It doesn't stop with one group. Hating continues to go. And there's that famous saying about first they came for the gypsies, then they came for the gays, then they came for the Jews, and then no one was there to say anything. So my family commitment, my story of survival is one of vigilance, of resilience, and of believing in the fight for justice and the fight that all of us need all of us. And that's what drove me to want to serve and to fulfill the promise of America, which right now is under challenges like never before.
Thank you. I've talked to more than one person in the last couple of days who have asked me, Marty, when do I pull the plug and leave? It's a real question. I sat with a young person today who's a victim of a crime and is afraid to report because a parent is undocumented. And she trusts the police to not cooperate with ICE. So I think that a lot of our community is afraid. And do you think, I mean, this is a ridiculous question. You must think this. You wake up with hope every day, I would assume. Like, I wonder when the rule of law fails. Do you ever wonder that?
I was at Fort Lewis College last week, and I got a very similar question. It was phrased differently, but the same basic question. The question was, how are you not afraid? And the question both was meant literally to me, but more broadly, like, how is one not afraid in this moment? And my answer comes also from my religious tradition, which has this saying, and it's from a rabbi who says, the whole world is a narrow bridge, and the important thing is not to be afraid. There's a lot of commentary in this. We can feel fear, that fear that an immigrant's feeling right now, or a trans kid is feeling right now. I get it. The challenge, though, don't be paralyzed by that fear. Don't give up. Don't wallow in despair. We got to cross that narrow bridge. And if we look over the side, we're going to face a lot of fear, but we got to keep moving. We've got to believe. And my grandmother would say that. I would ask her, Bubby, which is what I called her, How did you hold on to hope? How did you believe that you could have a better future during such dark times when she was actually pregnant in a concentration camp? And she would tell me it's easier to believe. As long as you hold on to hope, nothing's lost. Way to start on a light note, Marty.
That's a little heavy. It reminds me of a story, and I don't know if it came out of Elie Wiesel, or where I heard it, but a woman who survived the Holocaust, and she had an arsenic tablet, and somebody said, "Why didn't you take it?" And she said, "I was waiting until it got really bad."
There's another famous story, and it's called, I think, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, who writes, anyone who has a why can endure any how. And my grandmother had a why, and she actually sent a note to my grandfather when she was pregnant, said, you have what to live for.
Well, you come from some good stock, I think they'd say in the country.
I feel a sense of obligation. Like my grandparents survived really dark times. They wanted to come to America because they believed in America. I have inherited that belief. I'm a first-generation American. I'm going to fight for it.
Thank you. Thanks for fighting. I know you're fighting all the time for us. So one of the things that makes me really excited about you is that you knew RBG. So I wonder how, like, you got to that position. You must have been a really great student. I mean, they don't take just any, well, sometimes they take just anybody that looks for law clerks, but that used to not be the truth. And like, if you could share one like special moment that you had with her when she said, "Okay, Phil."
I want to share two, if that's
Oh,
okay.
good.
One is personal and one is more professional. The personal one, for the first time that it happened to her, the Supreme Court was going to sit on Yom Kippur, which is the holiest day of the Jewish year. RBG was Jewish, very strong Jewish identity, but she wasn't an observant person. She didn't actually go to synagogue on Yom Kippur. I don't think she fasted on Yom Kippur. She had a friend who I've later become close friends with, Kathleen Paradas, who she worked with at the ACLU, who was a convert to Judaism. Kathleen wrote her at the time and said, you cannot sit on Yom Kippur because you're a symbol for Jews. And I remember getting her the articles about Sandy Koufax refusing to play on Yom Kippur and sharing it with her. And she did indeed refuse to sit on Yom Kippur, and the Chief Justice made sure the Supreme Court would never sit on Yom Kippur afterwards.
Didn't know that piece of history. Thank you.
Second one you do know about, which is I was clerking for the year of the Virginia Military Institute case. It's profiled in the movies that you may have seen, the RBG documentary. Mm-hmm. And there's something really special that she is an icon. She fought for equal rights and litigated at the Supreme Court very important cases. She got to then write a very important opinion that made clear that you need an exceedingly persuasive justification to ever treat women differently than men. And because of her opinion, women are now at the Virginia Military Institute. And in the documentary, you actually got to see her going to VMI and welcoming cadets, including women.
Oh, if we could just have her now.
Amen.
So I find lawyers to be a little dry. Well, you know, and that's, we always need a lawyer around, and we're always looking for lawyers to serve in different capacities. I have some good lawyer jokes. I'm not going to tell them here, but
what did the lawyer name his daughter?
I don't know.
Sue.
There you go. That's a good one. So are you kind of a fun guy? Every time I see you, you're very buttoned up. Your mind is full of law and citing different things and really clear. But do you ever have any fun?
I do ever have fun, yes.
What do you do for fun?
I'm a huge Denver Nuggets fan.
Ooh.
I'm very excited about this season. I will be taking my son to some games, and we enjoy going to see concerts as well. Our family loves music and enjoy hiking, and we enjoy each other's company, watching TV, reading. So, yes, I make time for some leisure activities despite a very intense schedule.
Yeah, it's a schedule. Isn't it exciting that Carmelo gave us a shout out when he got the big award?
Talk about the need for healing. It's really sad, actually, that Carmelo Anthony and the Nuggets have not come to a good place. And it's for those who are not Nuggets fans, the Nuggets gave this young, unknown player, Nikola Jokic, Carmelo Anthony's number, and now have a dilemma. because you're going to have to retire the same number twice. And my answer is do it.
Mm-hmm.
Retire it for Carmelo and retire it for Jokic. There's a way through this. We should celebrate what he brought to the Nuggets. And I was here during the Melo era, and he is a Nugget for life, and we should celebrate that.
I think he ended up in New York when I was in New York. Did they trade him off to New York?
He demanded the trade.
Okay.
They traded him, and it didn't actually work out great
No,
for
it did
anybody.
not.
The Nuggets arguably got some benefit because I believe one of the draft picks that the Nuggets got was used to get Jamal Murray, if my memory serves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't remember that piece, but I remember my dad. My dad was a big Nuggets fan. He's passed, but Melo made my dad's like the seasons that he was here. They were so good.
Remember when he played with Allen Iverson together?
Mm-hmm.
That was again electric, both pure shooters.
Yeah. So are you tracking the statistics there, or are you enjoying the game?
Oh, I enjoy the game. Although I'll tell you this, it's somewhat distracting. They've now put, for those who go to the game, like these real-time analytics, which my son loves looking at. It's like projecting the score and all this stuff. And for me, it's distracting and slightly annoying. But my son loves it.
Well, there's something for everybody at the Nuggets, is what I understand. So when I say to somebody, I'm talking to the Attorney General, and it's not somebody who lives in the world of the power structures, and they'll be like, well, what does the Attorney General do?
I define the job as the people's lawyer. That means, as you think about the situation you mentioned earlier, you have a family member who's undocumented, and you're worried about public safety and whether law enforcement is going to cooperate with ICE and share information. One of my jobs is to enforce Colorado law and to protect people from just what you mentioned. Colorado law enforcement is law enforcement, period. Colorado law enforcement does not do immigration enforcement, does not share information with immigration enforcement. It's very important that we follow that law because we need immigrant communities and immigrants not to be afraid of reporting crimes to law enforcement. So that's one of my jobs. I investigate pattern and practices of civil rights violations. That was part of how we got a consent decree in the city of Aurora for discriminatory policing. I will oversee cases against workers who have been harmed by, for example, violation of our non-compete law, or they've been put into these training repayment agreement provisions. We brought a case recently against PetSmart. We had one earlier against HCA where nurses or pet groomers were given these very expensive training plans that they were deceptively told about, and then were saddled with all this debt once they left. It's not the right way to treat people. What I want you to know as a worker, as a citizen, as a consumer, if you're mistreated, your rights are violated, let us know about it at stopfraudcolorado.gov. And now the last area, which has become very important for the state of Colorado, I will stand up against this administration that is lawless, that is bullying, that is reckless, and is harmful again and again and again. We've now brought 35 cases overall, and I've already promised there's a 36th one coming. It's the one about Space Command getting moved because the president says he doesn't like Colorado having mail-in balloting. I'm sorry, the Constitution gives us the right to choose how to manage our elections. His effort to punish us for exercising our constitutional rights, that harms all of us. As the people's lawyer, as the lawyer for the state of Colorado, I'll be going to court to fight for the state of Colorado.
Thank you. Thanks for all that. There's so much to challenge. I'm glad you know the law and that the law has held this thus far and that he's getting set back or at least stopped. This is a little bit in the weeds, but it's something that I learned about recently, and I don't know if I can even restate it. There are temporary restraining orders, and then there are injunctions. So if we could use the case of the one of the first cases that you signed on with A.G. Brown around gender-affirming care. Can you talk a little bit about that case and then let us know where that sits and when we might have a decision?
I may need to phone a friend to get the exact details, but I've got a decent idea of it. For those who aren't familiar, one of the executive orders that was done illegally, harmfully, and recklessly was one that said, we're going to punish any state that tries to allow gender affirming care. And we want all the hospitals all across the U.S. to cease providing this care for kids And the conversations I had with families and with trans kids, as gut wrenching as it can get, because people were really afraid in that moment. And I heard the concerns and I did what is my obligation. And I'm proud of how our team stepped up. We were one of 4 states with Washington that went to court and challenged this executive order saying Colorado law provides the right to gender affirming care. This is for kids who otherwise could be at risk of suicide, life-saving healthcare. And to cut this off midstream is cruel. And I fought that case. And to your point, the first step is a temporary restraining order. That's limited in time. Then the next step is a preliminary injunction. And the final step would be a permanent injunction. Now, a preliminary injunction can be appealed to the Court of Appeals. And my recollection is in this case, there's some possible conversation that maybe there might be an appeal of the preliminary injunction, but I'm not 100% sure if that is where this case lands, or if instead, which had been the case for a while, the Department of Justice was just taking their medicine and recognizing, like in so many other cases, they overstepped here. This is the province of states to oversee healthcare, the province of states to decide how to protect our citizens, and it was a federal overreach to try to tell us how to approach an issue that the federal government had no business trying to bully us on.
Thank you. The question that comes to mind as you talk about the overreach of the feds into the state. Dick Cheney's showing up in my head somewhere. It's all states' rights. But we think about the Dobbs decision, where it's been given back to the states. How do you legally reconcile this is a states' rights issue and this isn't?
The idea of our Constitution is that we have this form of government called federalism. And the federal government has certain authority under the Constitution, and other authority is reserved to the states. In some cases, the Constitution will specifically call out what is the role of states. So in the first instance, states decide the time, place, and manner of elections. That's a issue for the states. I actually went to the Supreme Court on an earlier case involving Colorado's electors, where we said you can't be a faithless elector. You can't vote for someone other than who the people of Colorado want you to vote for. And we won that case unanimously. That was a victory for the right of states to manage elections. So that's an example of what's a core right. Congress has authorities under the Constitution. For example, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is an implementation of really the 14th Amendment and its commitment that we're going to provide equality. And the 14th Amendment was a promise of equal justice for all, and it really took a whole century before new laws, the Civil Rights Revolution, the Voting Rights Act, which is an effort to make good on the 15th Amendment. And we, at the states, need to follow the Constitution, and laws that implement the Constitution, like the Voting Rights Act, are laws that the states have to follow. But there are other situations that come up sometimes where the federal government doesn't really have any business telling us what to do. And we want to make sure that we protect our rights to make our own decisions about how we govern ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you for that. While we're on cases, so you're headed to the Supreme Court soon. Are you going yourself?
I will be there for this Chiles case. It will be, I'm not sure what number case that we'll have during my tenure. I think this is, depending how you count, number 5 or 6. I have argued a couple of them. The one I mentioned, the faithless electors, I argued another First Amendment case called Counterman. We had the 303 creative case. Marty, you and I talked a bit about that. And now we have another case involving our law that bans so-called conversion practices.
So on your way to the Supreme Court, so I grew up with racehorses. I'm from rural Colorado. I grew up in southeastern Colorado. My dad was a veterinarian. And so there's one little, like every time you left the barn, you never left a piece of straw on a tine. That was like just welcoming bad luck into your stable. And there are certain things like I'll wear certain socks on a certain day. Just, is there anything that you do when you go to the Supreme Court? You're going to wear the same thing that you won, or what do you do?
It's a very interesting point, and I had not been asked a question before. I have tended to, and now I'm going to have to tell my
Oh, sorry.
team to remind me, wear a tie that I got from Justice White. I actually worked for not just one, but two Supreme Court justices. Byron White from Colorado is, a legend for having been both a star athlete and also a very successful person. And the tie is a tie that has a buffalo on it. It was obviously special to Byron White, and as a fellow Coloradan, it was an honor to, after he passed, take possession of that tie. And so that's the tie I will be wearing. It's meaningful to me. This case, the Chiles case, I won't argue myself. I've got a Solicitor General who's going to argue it. She's tremendous. It's very important. We also had an interesting opportunity in the Faithless Lectors case to have another point of memorabilia with me when I argued it, because it was argued from our conference room. It was a We the People baseball that I was able to have with me. And that was a good luck charm. I don't know that I can bring that into the Supreme Court
Yeah, that
courtroom,
won't
but
make
I was
it
able to
through.
make the most of the pandemic argument where I argued before the Supreme Court, but not at the Supreme Court.
It's under construction. I was in D.C. in sometime this summer, and there was construction happening at the Supreme Court. The ring that I have on was Clela Rorick's ring. And so on days when I'm feeling like I'm meeting the Attorney General, I'm like, I need a little superpower here. Clela, will you come with me? And so I still take every blade of grass off my rake when I put them away, and wear special things too. So thanks for sharing that. It's got to be really stressful. I can't even imagine, like, you're carrying so much. In this case in particular, Chiles v. Salazar, if we lose this one, there is a lot of harm that happens. Alana Chin, who was from Boulder, who died of suicide because of conversion therapy by a church, is just one of the most heartbreaking stories ever. And there's a tremendous podcast that I've listened to twice called Dear Alana by Simon Fung, that really brings to light the harm that this does. He tells a wonderful story of a very sad situation. And so when I think about that, I know a number of people who were forced into conversion therapy. Back in the day, Kyle, who works with us, was telling a story on Saturday about one of a transgender man, elder to Kyle, shared the stories of him having to undergo electric shock because they needed to fix us. And so when I think about this case, and we're coming up like October 7th or 8th, the 9th, somewhere in there. 7th. There's so much riding on your shoulder. And so I want to talk a little bit about the case, because I think it's interesting that they chose Colorado because we already have a carve-out for religious institutions. They don't have to follow it, which is, I thought, was a problem with the initial law. If I was fighting, it would be about that. But that they would come after us even when we have that carve-out. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. But I also kind of want to know, like, I'll say Phil here, like, as Phil, how do you manage that kind of pressure and that kind of stress, especially walking into a Supreme Court that doesn't feel that supreme or fair these days? And like, as an individual, like, I get anxious just like having a podcast with you. I can't imagine like all.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
Really? Oh,
Theo,
come on.
yeah, I do. Because I have high respect for you, and I want to do a good job, and I want to make sure that the listeners get a sense of who you are and all that you're doing for us. And so, yeah, I do, but I'm not walking into the Supreme Court with lives on the line. So how do you ready yourself for that, other than your cool ties, for that kind of pressure? And then if you would go on and talk a little bit about the case.
It is one of the most intense experiences a lawyer can have. I've argued myself twice, and I'm responsible for preparing our Solicitor General for this case. That I'll start with this case, then I'll talk more about the preparation. Many people may not think a lot about this, but 25 states have now banned this so-called conversion therapy, really conversion practices. There's no legitimate basis. The medical establishment has such a clear consensus. This practice, it's just harmful with lasting harm. It doesn't provide any benefits. That's why, as a whole category, Colorado, on a bipartisan basis, said, like 24 other states, these conversion practices are inappropriate and licensed professionals cannot use them. Your point is right, Marty. If you're engaging in a religious-based activity, that's protected by the First Amendment. Colorado's law doesn't touch it. But Colorado says if you're holding yourself out as a therapist, providing treatments, you can't provide a treatment that has no medical basis, a treatment that is substandard. That's not a novel point. There's never been a challenge to this important premise. And by the way, think about other cases, which is someone goes to the doctor and they've got cancer, and the doctor says, I'm going to give you vitamin C for the cancer. That is substandard care. That is the basis for a malpractice lawsuit. That's the basis to lose your license. If a doctor says, I'm going to tell you, you can't be who you are, and by the way, you made a really important point. A lot of the types of treatments that happen, they are cruel. They could include things like you said, electroshock therapy, or they can include telling a patient, I don't want you to talk to any of the women in your life. That's harmful, and they're lasting harms. We shouldn't allow people in Colorado, kids and families, to be harmed. That's what the stakes are. Now, in terms of the challenge, I had this case I argued called Colorado versus Counterman, and the group that was protected were victims of stalking. Stalking victims were the protected group. And the challenge in that case, it's not unlike the challenge in this case. How do you break through to the justices so they understand stalking victims suffer harms? It's a serious crime. This case, the question is, how do you break through and make clear we're talking about something that's harmful? Those who go through these so-called conversion practices, they are harmed. There's lasting harm. That's what we got to break through. And one of the challenges is the justices there are in their own bubble. And in that bubble, they may not know people who've been through conversion therapy, as it's called. They may not know victims of stalking. I want to take you back to what I know is a painful memory for everyone in the LGBTQ plus community, and it highlights a lot, which is Bowers versus Hardwick. Bowers versus Hardwick was a case that the Supreme Court heard, and the question presented to the court is, can a state criminalize gays and lesbians having consensual sexual relations? Can they be themselves? Justice Powell was the swing vote. Justice Powell said at the time, I didn't know anybody who was gay. He had a law clerk that term who was gay. The law clerk had said, and back then, it was hard to come out. This is 1985, 86. The law clerk had said to fellow law clerks who knew the law clerk was gay, if the justice is going to vote the wrong way, I'll come out. Otherwise, I'll stay in the closet. Justice Powell went into the conference and voted with Justice Blackmun to basically say gays and lesbians have a right to live their lives and be themselves. And over the weekend, Powell changed his mind. And the law clerk had never come out, and Powell said he didn't know anybody was gay. The point of which is one of the challenges is when people are silent, when people don't share their stories, often those who don't have access to what's going on are quicker to reach, sometimes stereotypical, sometimes out of ignorance. And what has been important and what we got to keep doing is tell stories so that we're doing what Simon did. Simon telling that story, that's a public service. So people understand what has happened. We can't allow ourselves to be silenced.
Yeah, those are heavy stories. I wonder, and thinking through the justices, I bet you're right, that it's unlikely that they know someone who has suffered under conversion therapy.
You know who was an exception was Justice Kennedy. So Justice Kennedy, the RI clerk, wrote the opinion that overturned Amendment 2 in Colorado, Romer versus Evans. Yeah. Justice Kennedy had gay friends. And it's clear that his awareness of the lives that gays and lesbians lived made a huge difference in his decisions, his jurisprudence. He wrote opinions, Lawrence versus Texas, and it's which overturned Bowers versus Hardwick, and that's a loss to this court that he's not on the court anymore.
Yeah. It's a loss, and I was so surprised when he stepped down during Trump's first term.
him stepping down and so just for those who are watching this case, him stepping down and Ginsburg stepping down, both being replaced by people who are, just put it mildly, more conservative. That's why in cases like this, there's reason for concern that the progress that's been made on equality is not guaranteed. We've got to keep fighting the fight. We've got to keep telling the right stories that people hopefully will have more empathy based on and recognize that equal rights for all is what our constitutional tradition demands, and we've made progress. We got to defend it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So just a follow-up to that, how do you deal with your mind walking into that?
You just are prepared for every question you're going to get. The story that we'll be bringing in are the stories of people who have suffered. It's the commitment that preventing substandard healthcare is a long-standing role states have played, back to the roles of states, and that's what we're defending. We know what we're defending. We know what our argument is. We'll have made it in the briefings. We'll make it oral argument, and we'll do all we can. And obviously, there'll be a fair bit out of our control, but we want to make sure we've done everything we can to prevail in this case.
Thanks for all of that. So as we're getting close on time, and your schedule is tight, what does Colorado mean to you? Why are you in Colorado? How long have you been here? Do you love it?
I love Colorado. I moved here in 1994. We were actually known then as the hate state because it was during that era of Amendment 2. And I met this judge, David Ebell, who's a federal appeals court judge who hired me. In 1992, I met him. And he said, come work for me for a year in Colorado. The first time I'd ever been to Denver was for that interview. So I didn't know what to expect. What I fell in love with about Colorado, the natural beauty, of course, but more than that, the way people treat each other here. People in Colorado root for each other to succeed. And for me, that is incredibly powerful and compelling. That spirit is what I felt in 1994, and we're here 30 years later. I still feel that spirit. It's what makes us special. We got to hold on to it.
Yeah. I love Colorado too. So one kind of wonky one. Do you think Trump can get away with suspending elections?
No.
Thank you. I'll sleep better tonight, and I know our listeners will too. So who's your favorite gay icon besides me?
Marty, you're tough to beat, but I did see Brandy Carlisle at Red Rocks.
Oh, yeah.
And hearing her talk about being a mom and hearing her sing, for those who've never watched Brandy Carlisle perform, you're missing out. She had 3 nights at Red Rocks this year. I promised my wife we would have moments of joy, and boy, that was one of them.
Yeah, she's amazing. Are you a climber? Do you have a favorite 14er?
So I was talking about this with a friend. Grays and Tories is a twofer. You get to do 2 14ers at once. So I'd have to put that top of my list.
2 for the price of 1. And if you ever got a vacation and you were staying in Colorado, where would you go?
This is a hard one because I feel like it's choosing amongst my kids. So I love all of Colorado. I honestly can't pick one place. There are so many great places. There are a lot of undiscovered places in Colorado. For those who haven't been to the San Luis Valley and the sand dunes, you got to go. Trinidad, another real delight. I was just in the Four Corners, Durango and Cortez, amazing. Crested Butte, how you going? Stop by Salida.
Yeah.
And on and on.
So many. And the Grand Mesa. I love the Grand Mesa.
Grand Mesa is wonderful.
I wanted to go to, I planned on Mesa Verde this summer and plans fell through, but that's one of my favorite spiritual spots and when I'm so old that back in the day, I have a picture of my dad carrying me down into a kiva. You could go in, and now there's so much traffic. You have to go in by bus. So it has changed. What book are you reading right now?
So I'm now reading a Michael McGarrity book called Under Color of Law. It's about a New Mexico police chief. It's a legal thriller type book, which those of us looking for escapes, Michael McGarrity is one I'd recommend. Another one, I've read the whole series, C.J. Box, who writes about a Wyoming game warden. Really fun and a great entree into a whole nother world.
I love that. And then I follow your social media. It looks like you've been busy. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but so far, where's your favorite county fair?
Boy, you're can I pick the state fair and kind of pick the fair to beat all fairs? Pueblo State Fair is pretty special. I said this before, I mean it. I love all the counties in Colorado. There's not a county in Colorado that I don't love. I just was in Sedgwick County in Julesburg, hearing concerns about this canal that Nebraska wants to build. And part of what I love about Colorado is how people really show up in a respectful way, and we work together to solve problems. And there's a lot of that authentic spirit on the ground. A lot of people talk about the divisiveness and the rising demonization, but if you actually are up close with people, it's the best. And county fairs have that experience. Showing up and listening to people in counties has the experience. And for those who haven't ever been to our state fair in Pueblo, I highly recommend it.
It's a great state fair. I spent a lot of time there as a kid. They used to have horse racing there. So I spent weeks and weeks at the state fair. I love the state fair. I actually got my first car because I showed cattle at the Bent County Fair. So if you get an opportunity, it's already passed this year, but if you get an opportunity, County Fair.
Bent County, I just went down near there. John Stolp, I don't know if you knew John Stolp, was our state's water advisor, and John Hickenlooper had been Commissioner of Agriculture. John was in Lamar and was an icon down there, went down for memorial service.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that. I got to meet former Governor Romer and at an event, and somebody's like, have you met Governor Romer? I'm like, of course I have not. And so we started talking. Of course, he asked me about myself because that's the kind of guy he is. And I said, I'm from a little town you won't know anything about. And he said, I'm from a little town you won't know anything about. Try me. And he remembered, so Holly, where he's from, is probably 42 miles from where I grew up. And he remembered a football game between Holly and my high school, Los Animas. I mean, the guy's memory is amazing. And I understand he's still reading books about astrophysicists.
Correct. Roy Romer came to my office to do a fireside chat. And apropos of some of our topics today, he talked about the influence that FLAG, Families of Lesbians and Gays, had on him. Yeah. He was an early advocate for rights of gays and lesbians at a time that was a very unpopular political position. And it's really unfortunate the case is called Romer versus Evans because he was the lead against Amendment 2 and had really stood up for gays and lesbians at a time when that was not easy to do.
He told me that story the day that I met him. And he said that one of his friends who had a gay kid said, come with me to a meeting. And so he sat in the back of meetings and learned about our community.
That's the way Roy is. And it's, for me, he's my role model and mentor. Start with curiosity and really listen. If every leader, if every judge, every person had Roy Romer's listening mindset where he really tried to learn from humility, we'd live in a much better world.
We really would. I'm glad that you know him so well. I only got to meet him that once, and he's
still alive. You can see him again.
I can probably go. He's in Denver. He told me. So yeah. Attorney General Weiser, thank you so much, and on behalf of the larger community, thanks for being so clear, such a fierce leader for our rights that are continually under siege. And as they come up with their next idea, which will be not following the law, but people will be afraid not to follow the executive order, I know we can count on you to stand up for us. We send you nothing but good luck and Godspeed to the Supreme Court, where the work that you've been doing and lead up and the work that you will do that week for us will be closely watched, and we'll be celebrating you from home.
I appreciate that, Marty. Your leadership, it's extraordinary. For those who are tuning in, we need to celebrate you. Rocky Mountain Equality is truly a pillar of the Colorado community and a commitment to be a Colorado for all. Let's just recognize the archive. We just talked about, I moved here. We were known as the hate state. We're the first state that elected an openly gay person as our governor. And what is so amazing, and I see this with my kids, it's a different world. This is why I'm optimistic. Mm-hmm. For my kids, whether you're gay, whether you're trans, whatever, you be you. Yeah. Let everyone be their best authentic self, live their best life, and the state, the government has no business telling people who to be. And this case that we're bringing, it's about protecting people. And that's our charge in the Attorney General's office. It's an honor to serve.
Thank you, sir.
Pleasure to be here.
Proudly Out of Line is brought to you by Rocky Mountain Equality, with help from your host, Mardi Moore, executive producer, Amy Zuckerman, audio producer, Theo Conover. Until next time.